They say monsters don't hide in closets. But Darren Holt knows that's a lie. It started with a sound, soft scratching behind his closet door at midnight. At first, he thought it was a rat, or maybe the wood settling in the dark. But then he saw it. A face. A face that didn't belong to any human. Its skin was too pale, its smile too wide, its hollow eyes locked on him like it had been waiting all along. Darren tried to forget it, tried to convince himself he was imagining things, until his best friend Maya saw it too. Now the whispers won't stop. The claw marks keep getting deeper. And the thing in the closet has learned his name. This is the night Darren Holt will never forget. Because once you see the face in the closet, it never goes away. Darren Holt lived in a small house on the edge of town. His bedroom was quiet, with only the sound of the ticking clock on the wall. That night, he was lying in bed, scrolling on his phone, trying to make himself sleepy. The world outside was silent. No cars, no voices. Only the cold wind brushing against the window. Just as Darren closed his eyes, he heard something unusual. At first, it was faint, so faint he thought he imagined it. A soft scratching sound. His eyes opened again, his head turning slowly toward the closet in the corner of the room. The closet door stood shut, but the sound was real. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It wasn't fast like a mouse. It was slow, careful, almost as if something inside wanted him to hear it. Darren froze, holding his breath. His heart began to beat faster in his chest. He sat up on the bed, staring at the wooden door. The scratching continued. Sometimes it paused, then started again. He thought about calling for his parents, but it was past midnight. They wouldn't believe him anyway. He whispered to himself, "It's just wood, maybe the house is old, it's nothing." But deep inside, Darren knew this sound was different. It was too steady, too alive. The longer he stared, the more he noticed the air in the room had changed. It felt colder, like a window had been left open, but all the windows were shut tight. Goosebumps rose on his arms. Then all at once, the scratching stopped. Silence filled the room. Darren let out a shaky breath, almost relieved, until the closet door gave the slightest creak, as if something inside was pressing against it. His blood ran cold. Darren couldn't look away. He sat there, heart pounding, waiting for the door to move again. And in that heavy silence, he realized one thing. Whatever was making that sound was still in there. Darren sat frozen on his bed, eyes locked on the closet. His throat felt dry, and every second felt heavier than the last. The room was so silent that he could hear the beating of his own heart. Then it happened again. The closet door moved. Not much, just a tiny shift, like someone had pressed their hand against the inside. The old wooden door creaked softly, a sound that cut straight into Darren's bones. He wanted to tell himself it was just the wind. But how could it be? The windows were closed, the night was calm, and his closet had no draft. This movement wasn't natural. The air grew colder. It wasn't the kind of cold that came from weather. It was the kind that felt wrong, the kind that made the hairs on his arms rise. Darren rubbed his hands together, his breath trembling as it left his lips. His desk lamp flickered once, then steadied. Darren jumped at the sudden flash, and when his eyes returned to the closet, he swore he saw something, a shadow. For a split second, it looked like a figure was standing just behind the crack of the door. A dark shape, tall and still. But when Darren blinked, it was gone. He leaned forward slowly, his curiosity battling his fear. Every inch he moved felt dangerous, as though stepping too close might wake whatever was inside. He swallowed hard, whispering to himself, "There's nothing there. There's nothing there." But his words didn't comfort him. The closet door creaked again, longer this time, like someone was slowly pulling it from the inside. Darren's chest tightened, his body frozen in place. He wanted to run, wanted to scream, but his voice wouldn't come out. The room smelled strange now, like damp earth after rain. A smell that didn't belong in a bedroom. And then the sound stopped. The door stayed still. But Darren knew one thing for sure. Something was waiting in the dark, and it was aware of him. Darren's hands were shaking as he sat on the edge of his bed. His eyes never left the closet. The air was so heavy now that even breathing felt difficult. He told himself he should just get up, open the door, and prove there was nothing inside. But something deep inside warned him not to. The silence stretched on. Then the closet door creaked again, just slightly, opening no more than an inch. Darren's heart dropped. His whole body froze. Through that tiny gap he saw it. At first he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. But no, something was staring back. A face. It wasn't human. Its skin looked pale and stretched too tightly over its bones, like thin paper ready to tear. Its eyes were wide, far too wide, and completely black, empty as holes. Worst of all was the mouth. It curled into a grin that was far too long, as though someone had drawn it with a knife. The face didn't blink. It didn't move. It just watched him. Darren's lips trembled as he whispered, "No, no, no." His voice was so soft he wasn't sure if he even spoke out loud. For what felt like forever, the face stayed there, locked onto him. The darkness inside the closet seemed to swallow everything around it, pulling Darren's gaze deeper. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. It was like the thing had control over his eyes. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it slipped back into the shadows. The crack in the closet showed nothing but black emptiness again. The room went silent. The smell of damp earth grew stronger, filling Darren's nose. He felt his stomach twist, as if the air itself had gone rotten. Shaking, Darren pulled his blanket up to his chin, his eyes wide with fear. He wanted to believe it wasn't real, that he had imagined everything. But deep down he knew the truth. Something was inside his closet. And it was watching him. Darren stayed frozen on his bed, staring at the closet. His chest rose and fell quickly, his heart hammering against his ribs. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. That face, those black, empty eyes, were burned into his mind. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The room was still, almost too still. Darren waited, expecting the face to return, but the crack in the closet showed nothing but darkness. Then the scratching stopped completely. The silence was so deep it hurt his ears. It wasn't the kind of silence that felt peaceful. It was heavy, unnatural, like the whole house was holding its breath. Darren finally gathered enough courage to whisper, "Hello." His voice cracked, the sound small and shaky in the cold room. No answer came. Slowly, he slid his legs off the bed and placed his feet on the floor. The wooden boards creaked under his weight, making him flinch. He took one step closer to the closet, then another, his hands trembling at his sides. He stopped only a few feet away. His throat felt tight. Every instinct screamed at him not to touch the door. But he had to know. He reached out his hand, and then froze. Something changed in the air. A smell hit him first. It wasn't the usual smell of his room. It was strong, earthy, and damp, like wet soil freshly dug from the ground. Darren gagged, covering his nose. The stench was wrong. It didn't belong in his home. Then, without warning, the desk lamp flickered again, and the shadows in the corners stretched longer. Darren's hand pulled back instantly. His skin prickled with goosebumps. The closet door didn't move. No sound came from inside. But Darren knew the thing was still there. He could feel it, watching him, hiding just beyond the thin wooden door. He stumbled backward, climbed into bed, and pulled the blanket tightly over himself. His eyes stayed locked on the closet until morning light finally touched the room. But the silence never left. And neither did the feeling that he wasn't alone. That night, Darren tried to convince himself it had all been his imagination. He told himself the face wasn't real, that maybe it was just a shadow, a trick of tired eyes. But deep down he knew better. When the clock struck 3:11 a.m., he woke suddenly, as if something had pulled him from sleep. The room was freezing cold. His breath came out in small white puffs in the dark. He sat up slowly, his eyes heavy but alert, and looked straight at the closet. The door hadn't moved. It stood closed. But the air felt wrong again, thick, heavy, alive. Then he heard it. At first it was faint, so soft he thought it was just his own mind playing tricks. But as he strained to listen, the sound grew clearer. Whispering. Darren's stomach dropped. Someone, or something, was whispering inside his closet. The words didn't sound like English. They didn't sound like any language he knew. The voice was broken, jagged, low. It rose and fell in strange tones, as if chanting something old and forgotten. He pressed his hands against his ears, but the sound didn't stop. It felt like it was inside his head, crawling under his skin. His body trembled. He wanted to scream for his parents, but his voice wouldn't come out. His throat felt tight, locked shut with fear. The whispering grew louder, faster. Darren squeezed his blanket around him, his heart racing. His mind screamed, "Don't look. Don't look at the closet." But his eyes betrayed him. Slowly, unwillingly, he glanced toward the door. The closet remained closed, but the whispers kept pouring out, as if the wood itself was speaking. And then suddenly they stopped. The silence returned, sharp and heavy. Darren sat frozen in bed, his ears ringing. He didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe too loud, because he knew now, whatever was inside that closet wasn't just watching him. It was speaking to him. The next morning, Darren sat at the back of his classroom, staring blankly at his notebook. He hadn't slept at all. The whispering from the closet still echoed in his head, repeating over and over like a broken record. His hands shook when he tried to write, and his eyes burned from exhaustion. At lunch, his best friend Maya Trenton noticed something was wrong. She sat across from him at the table, leaning forward. "Darren, you look terrible. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." Darren hesitated. He wanted to keep it to himself, afraid she would laugh. But the weight of what he had seen, the face, the whispers, was too heavy. He needed to tell someone. Taking a deep breath, he whispered, "Maya, something's in my closet." Maya blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Darren lowered his voice even more. "Last night, I heard scratching. Then I saw a face. It wasn't human, Maya. It stared right at me. And last night I heard it whispering. It knows I'm there." For a moment, Maya just stared at him, her eyes wide. Darren expected her to laugh, to call him crazy. But she didn't. Instead, she frowned deeply. "Are you serious?" she asked. Darren nodded, his hands gripping the table. "I'm not making this up. I swear to you I saw it." Maya leaned back, thinking, "If you really saw something, then we need to prove it. I'll come over tonight. If there's something in your closet, I want to see it too." Darren's stomach dropped. The thought of facing it again terrified him. But part of him felt relief. He wouldn't be alone this time. "Okay," he whispered, his voice weak. "But, Maya, what if it shows itself again?" Maya looked him straight in the eyes. "Then we'll know the truth." That night, Darren sat on his bed, too nervous to breathe normally. The clock on his desk ticked slowly toward midnight. His room was dark except for the small glow of his desk lamp. Beside him, Maya sat cross-legged, clutching a flashlight in her hand. She looked around the room and whispered, "It's just a closet, Darren. Maybe you were half asleep before. Maybe it was just your imagination." Darren shook his head. "You'll see. Just wait." The minutes dragged on. At first, nothing happened. The room stayed quiet, only the sound of the ticking clock and their shallow breaths filling the silence. Maya started to look bored, rolling the flashlight in her hand. Darren wondered if maybe, just maybe, tonight the thing wouldn't show itself. And then it began. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Both of them froze. The sound came clearly from inside the closet. Maya's eyes widened. "You hear that?" she whispered. Darren nodded, his throat too tight to speak. The closet door creaked softly, shifting just an inch. Both of them stared in horror as a shadow moved across the crack. And then they saw it. The face. Pale, stretched, grinning too wide, with black hollow eyes staring straight at them. Its gaze was sharp, cold, and full of hunger. Maya gasped, her hand gripping Darren's arm so tightly her nails dug into his skin. Her lips trembled. "Darren, that's not possible." The face didn't blink. It just leaned closer, pressing itself against the tiny crack, as if it wanted to push through. Darren's heart raced so fast he thought it would burst. Maya's hand shook violently, the flashlight rattling in her grip, but she was too scared to turn it on. The face held its awful grin for several long seconds. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it slipped back into the darkness. The scratching stopped. The closet door stood still again. Maya turned to Darren, her voice shaking. "You weren't lying. It's real." The room was silent, but Darren and Maya could still feel it. The thing inside the closet hadn't left. It was waiting. Maya gripped Darren's arm, her face pale. "We should leave," she whispered. Before Darren could answer, the closet door creaked again. This time it opened wider, the wood groaning as if forced from the inside. Darren's stomach dropped. His body screamed at him to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He could only watch. From the darkness inside, something moved forward. Not the face this time, something else. A hand. It slid out slowly, long and bony, with skin stretched too tight across its thin frame. The fingers were far too long, ending in sharp, claw-like nails. They scraped softly against the wooden floor as the hand reached farther into the room. Maya gasped, covering her mouth with both hands to keep from screaming. Her wide eyes filled with tears. The hand clawed at the floor, dragging itself forward like it was testing the air, searching. Darren's breath caught in his throat. The smell of damp earth filled the room again, stronger than before, almost choking him. Then the rest of the arm began to slide out, unnaturally thin, its shadow stretching across the floor in the dim light. The face appeared again, grinning wider, half hidden in the darkness of the closet. Its hollow eyes never left Darren's. Suddenly, the long fingers curled, digging into the wooden floor with a sharp screeching sound. The whole closet door rattled violently, slamming against its frame. That broke the spell. "Run!" Darren shouted. Both he and Maya bolted for the bedroom door, their footsteps pounding. As they reached the handle, the closet slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang that shook the room. The house went silent again. Darren and Maya stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath. Neither of them dared look back. But both knew the truth. The thing inside the closet wasn't just watching anymore. It was trying to come out. The next morning, Darren barely had the courage to step back into his room. He and Maya had spent the rest of the night downstairs, too afraid to return. When the sun finally rose, they decided to check. The room looked normal at first. The desk, the bed, the posters on the wall. Everything was the same. For a moment, Darren almost felt foolish. Maybe, just maybe, it had all been some horrible dream. But then his eyes drifted to the closet door. He froze. His breath caught in his throat. There, carved deep into the wood, were long, sharp claw marks. The grooves were uneven but powerful, stretching down the length of the door, as if something had dragged its nails across it with force. Darren stepped closer, his heart hammering. He ran his fingers over the grooves. They were real. The wood had been torn apart. Maya stood beside him, covering her mouth. "Oh my God! Darren, this is proof. It was real." It touched the door. Just then, footsteps echoed behind them. Darren's parents appeared in the doorway, looking concerned. His mother frowned. What happened here? His father walked up, inspecting the closet. "Darren, did you do this? Did you take a knife to this door?" Darren shook his head quickly, panic in his voice. "No. I swear it wasn't me. Something inside the closet did this." His parents exchanged frustrated looks. "That's enough," his father snapped. "I don't want to hear any more nonsense." Maya tried to speak up, her voice shaking. "No, he's telling the truth. I saw it too. There's something in there." But Darren's parents didn't listen. They shook their heads and walked out, muttering about punishments and repairs. Darren stood there, his hands trembling, staring at the deep marks in the wood. He felt sick, because now he knew for certain. The thing wasn't just watching. It was trying to break free. That night, Darren lay in his bed, wide awake. He couldn't stop staring at the closet door. The claw marks were still there, carved deep into the wood, even though his parents had promised to fix it tomorrow. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Darren pulled the blanket up to his chest, trying to calm his breathing. He told himself over and over, "It can't come out. The door is shut. The door is shut." But then, just past midnight, the air in his room changed again. The warmth was gone, replaced by a cold so sharp it stung his skin. The silence grew heavy, pressing down on him like a weight. And then creak. The closet door moved. Darren's heart leapt into his throat. The door opened slowly, just an inch, just enough for the darkness inside to spill out into the room. At first, there was nothing. No scratching. No whispers. Just the sound of his own pulse in his ears. Then he saw it. The face slid into view again, pale and stretched, with those hollow, endless eyes. Its grin was wider this time, its sharp mouth pulling almost to its ears. It didn't blink. It didn't move. It just stared at him. Darren clutched the blanket tighter, frozen. He wanted to scream, but his voice was trapped in his chest. And then he heard it. The whisper. But this time it wasn't just strange words. This time it spoke his name. Darren. The sound was sharp, broken, like glass being dragged across stone. Hearing it made his stomach twist. "Darren," the voice hissed again, this time louder, closer. Darren's body shook violently. He pulled the blanket over his head, his whole body trembling as tears filled his eyes. But the whisper didn't stop. It laughed softly, a low, unnatural sound that didn't belong in this world. The last thing Darren heard before blacking out was the closet door creaking open wider, and the voice calling his name one final time. That night, Darren lay in his bed, wide awake. He couldn't stop staring at the closet door. The claw marks were still there, carved deep into the wood, even though his parents had promised to fix it tomorrow. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Darren pulled the blanket up to his chest, trying to calm his breathing. He told himself over and over, "It can't come out. The door is shut. The door is shut." But then, just past midnight, the air in his room changed again. The warmth was gone, replaced by a cold so sharp it stung his skin. The silence grew heavy, pressing down on him like a weight. And then creak. The closet door moved. Darren's heart leapt into his throat. The door opened slowly, just an inch, just enough for the darkness inside to spill out into the room. At first there was nothing. No scratching. No whispers. Just the sound of his own pulse in his ears. Then he saw it. The face slid into view again, pale and stretched, with those hollow, endless eyes. Its grin was wider this time, its sharp mouth pulling almost to its ears. It didn't blink. It didn't move. It just stared at him. Darren clutched the blanket tighter, frozen. He wanted to scream, but his voice was trapped in his chest. And then he heard it. The whisper. But this time it wasn't just strange words. This time it spoke his name. Darren. The sound was sharp, broken, like glass being dragged across stone. Hearing it made his stomach twist. Darren, the voice hissed again, this time louder, closer. Darren's body shook violently. He pulled the blanket over his head, his whole body trembling as tears filled his eyes. But the whisper didn't stop. It laughed softly, a low, unnatural sound that didn't belong in this world. The last thing Darren heard before blacking out was the closet door creaking open wider, and the voice calling his name one final time. From that night on, Darren Holt was never the same. His parents thought he was losing his mind, but Maya knew the truth, because she saw it too. The whispers never stopped. The claw marks only grew deeper, and the face in the closet never went away. Every night, the door creaks open just a little more. Every night, the voice grows louder, calling his name, dragging him closer. And Darren knows something now. Once you see the face in the closet, you can never escape it, because it doesn't just live in the dark. It waits for you. And maybe, just maybe, it's waiting in your closet too.